If you're a movie collector, you need Movies Anywhere. It pulls your favorite purchase movies from participating digital retailers into one central place, so you can finally say goodbye to scattered movie collections and hello to an organized library. With Movies Anywhere, you can watch your favorite movies on any compatible device, whenever and wherever you want. Ready to grow and enjoy your digital collection? Visit moviesanywhere.com/welcome and register for free. Registration with Movies Anywhere required. Open to U.S. residents 13 and over.
Holidays are here, and so is fashionable fitness. Gift yourself a Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 3 5G, a phone that folds in half to literally stand on its own. Pair it with the Galaxy Watch 4 for ultimate wellness and wow factor. Check health stats, flex personal records. Over 90 activities can be tracked, like biking, swimming, golfing, and more. Invest in yourself with tech made to crush goals. Holidays open up with Galaxy. Shop it all at Samsung.com. 5G connection and availability may vary. Check with carrier. Products sold separately.
Hey everyone, this is the Almost World Podcast. Bringing to you mind-blowing interviews with guests from all over the world. So settle down, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh yeah, by the way, if you like the podcast, please support Elmo's World Podcast on Patreon. Your support is what helps the podcast improve more and more. Welcome to Elmo's World Podcast. This is Elmo, your host, and I'm here with my awesome friend, Ante. Hey man, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi Elmo. Elmo. It's a pleasure to be on your show. My name is Ante. I'm from Croatia. Although my formal training lies in history, some 5 years ago I started to be quite interested, or 6 years ago I started to be quite interested in philosophy of religion, in some general topics in metaphysics, about causation, about Mariology, and so on. Also, my interest lies in Buddhist philosophy, in Catholic theology, the Catholic-Protestant debate of some sort, evolution and creation, and all of those hot topics out there, related to theology.
Well, can you talk about what you do right now specifically? Are you a student or still studying, or what do you do for work? And what are your projects, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm a student right now. I have a BA in history. I'm now actually a graduate student. Sorry. I'm just doing my casual work. I like doing my exams, preparing for them. I have some projects I'm doing right now. That is, I have a project in mind with a professor of mine who is at the University of Munich. We are going to write something about the old cult of the god Amun in ancient Egyptian theology, in the Theban theology. I have a fiancée. I'm 25 years old. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, can you talk about your journey? I guess from the time that you realized or you started asking the big questions, and then talk about what you've become or where the roads you've taken, and basically the milestones of your worldview and how you've arrived to where you are right now.
Sure. So I grew up in a pretty much pious Catholic home. Like, my parents were both traditional pious Catholics. And as a child, I was always asking those questions, why is there anything at all? Why is reality as it is, in a way? When I was a teenager, I started to see religion as a superstition. I didn't like to go to mass anymore. I was kind of not so much interested in Christianity as such. I saw it as a phase of my life, and I'm currently not in. Like I overgrow Christianity in some sort. This was my perception as a teenager. Then I started to engage in some pretty bad atheist literature like Dawkins and co. Hitchens, and I think Hitchens was even alive back then. So I started to have some kind of anti-religious feelings and in general an anti-religious attitude as such. And I kind of then shifted to agnosticism in my high school years. I started to see some merit in pantheism and so on. Also, my ethics changed a little bit. Like I was not religious back then, but I started to see some issues with the pro-choice direction when it comes to the issue of abortion and so on. So I was kind of shifting a bit to this more theistic worldview, but I wasn't there yet because I was not satisfied with the atheism I had back then. Then my interest after high school went to Buddhism. I have no idea actually how it came to this. I just know that I was kind of reading Buddhist literature, and I'm not speaking about those willy-nilly New Age stuff out there that pretends to be Buddhism but it isn't. I'm actually really talking about Buddhist philosophy. I started to be a practicing Buddhist. I was reading. I was trying to practice a kind of Zen Buddhism, also engaging in Buddhist philosophy as such as well. But then when I was in college, in the second year of college, I was kind of unsatisfied with the Buddhist outlook on reality. There was some. I can talk about this, but there were core problems with two main doctrines of Buddhism, the Anatta and the Shunyata doctrine. I was kind of shifting towards either in full-fledged atheism or into some kind of theism. I wasn't sure what my thinking is lending me. So, I was kind of thinking about atheism or naturalism, like Graham Oppy kind of naturalism, like a full-fledged metaphysical position. But I wasn't actually satisfied with this. I wasn't satisfied with reductionism when it comes to philosophy of mind. So all of those issues, which I was perceiving from a standpoint of a naturalist, were kind of murky in my eye. I was trying to find some worldview that would fit all the intuitions I have. I didn't find it in Buddhism. I didn't find it in naturalism. I started to read philosophers like Vallicella, like James Erich, Jacques Maritain, for example. He was the first Catholic philosopher I ever read. And then I came across like Daniel von Wachter, Kuhns, Pras, Rasmussen, all of those guys in the Christian team, so to say, if you know what I mean. And my thinking shifted on many issues. I saw that there are some solutions when it comes to the evolution and creation debate. It was really a great problem for me actually to accept Christianity as such, as a coherent worldview. Also, I wasn't actually sold by any particular argument for theism as such. I only saw that many of them actually point to something, like both the five ways, both the Leibnizian arguments using the PSR, either the strong or the soft version of the PSR, or like the Kalam or fine-tuning arguments. All of them were not. I wasn't satisfied by them in a way that that proves theism. Like it's certain that theism is true because of those arguments. But they pointed me to a new kind of metaphysics. A more open. I was getting to be more open to the existence of God. Also, I was starting to think, like, what is it that the Christians actually kind of believe? Why do they believe in Christ? Why do they believe in this zombie-like figure? This was my perception back then, that resurrected from the dead. And why is that such? Why are there such beliefs? Then I was starting to investigate Christianity as such, the Christian sources, namely the Gospels, the Acts of the Apostles, and And the thing is, I realized I was actually never kind of fair from a historical standpoint towards those documents. I always treated them as kind of mythological literature, but they didn't present themselves as such. I was also encountering the work of Lydia McGrew. She also influenced me to some extent. I gradually came to Christianity. I gradually kind of found myself in the position where I no longer held any naturalistic beliefs. I mean, I no longer held the opinion that one can describe reality in solely a naturalistic fashion, or at least that such a description of reality, such a perception of it, has some problems or isn't intuitive enough for me. I also abandoned Buddhism. I saw it has unsurpassable problems. And, I was kind of open to Christianity. Then, of course, if you accept Christianity, you get on this road like, okay, which version of Christianity should I accept? Like, what should be doctrinally binding for me? Like, what are the essential beliefs and so on? I was, of course, drawn to Protestantism because of its, like in Protestantism, it's just me, the Bible, and, there is no authority bigger than myself. That's what I thought, at least. I mean, many Protestants would disagree with this, of course, but I have my reasons to think that Protestantism actually boils down to this kind of epistemology, like I am my own pope. But then I soon realized that that's not going to work. And, my journey led me back to Catholicism as kind of the only plausible worldview, if Christianity is true, that is. So, I can unpack many of this stuff. Sorry if that's too general, but
no, it's awesome. Yeah, but don't you think it's kind of funny, right? Like you sort of left home and journeyed throughout the world to find the answers, and you found the answers at home in being a Catholic.
Yeah. I was also at some point looking into Orthodoxy, Eastern Orthodoxy. Because of the beauty of the liturgy. My heart is still in the Byzantine Catholic rite, but I also saw some problems in Orthodoxy as well. Especially after encountering the works of Lofton and Ibarra, and so they are kind of popular in the Orthodox versus Catholic debate of today. But then, ultimately, I just found my way back home, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's my first question, right? Like, when it came to you said that you were gradually becoming a theist, but you said also that you were sort of not satisfied with the arguments like the Kalam, the Leibnizian, the PSR, and the fine tuning. But how did you find yourself? Like one day, I'm a theist, but you did also realize that there were sort of indicating that God is real. But what really made it clear to you that oh man, I'm a theist? You just woke up and
sure. I would just say first and foremost, we shouldn't throw it out of the window that a faith is a gift, like it is really a supernatural gift. I'm bound to believe that as a Catholic, of course. But the reason can lead one, if one is actually open for this kind of intellectual journey, towards theism. When I say that that I didn't find them satisfying, what I mean is that, you know, take Craig's Kalam, for example. Like, okay, I see the argument. I have many. As soon as I saw the argument, like his Kalam version, I had many objections. Like initial problems, like for the three premises, especially for the last one. But then, you know, you kind of get into all, like, it's kind of like with arguments, you're not actually buying into an argument. Without buying into the whole metaphysical framework out of which this argument is made. Like, you cannot just go read St. Thomas's arguments on, I don't know, on Wikipedia or something, and then they will, like, sound convincing to you. No, they won't. You have to actually dig into this particular metaphysics, and then see if this metaphysical worldview is actually it's holding up, and then you can go back to the arguments and see if they are kind of satisfactory to you. And this is what I mean, those arguments didn't actually kind of change my mind immediately. They just kind of like irritated my mind. Like, okay, I mean, surely there has to be something more to them. Like it's not that. I mean, people like Aderberg or Craig or Locke or I don't know, Kuhns, they believe those things for a reason. Like, I have to just dig a bit more into the metaphysics behind the argument, you know. And after doing that, I mean, I now see what arguments I have my favorite arguments, of course, or those who fit my intuition the best, or those who are the most rigorous, or something like that. But then also you see that what kind of argumentation is not good, or what kind of argumentation is not, in a way, satisfactory, and so on. And yeah, I mean, gradually, I was digging into the metaphysics. Like, for example, when it comes to Craig's Kalam, you are digging into the issues about infinity, about causal infinitism, about the issues of time, whether it can actually whether it holds in a B theory of time, or is some other version of a theory of time. What is actually time, and so on. Like, if you dig into all of those questions, then you can come back and see, okay, yeah, this argument is good, or no, it's not good. So yeah.
Okay, so I guess when you said that you have to really dig into a metaphysical framework in order to actually understand and maybe realize for yourself that it could actually be true, right? So and so you looked into the Kalam and all these theist perspectives and maybe atheist perspectives too. So how would, I guess, like, for someone like me, you know, I'm not really that familiar with the academic papers or the specific details, but how would you, I guess, what would be your criteria to know whether or not a specific metaphysical framework actually corresponds to reality, or is actually true?
Sure. So, well, first and foremost, one needs to ask, when one is investigating a metaphysical view of reality, what are the objections to it? Like, does it have some problems, or doesn't have problems? And then you can evaluate the objections for this particular view, see if they actually hold up or not. Like, are they? Can they be answered? And you actually just generally see if the worldview in question is coherent. Then again, after this, you actually start to kind of like, you know, you're having this worldview on one hand and this other worldview on the other hand, and then you see, okay, what fits best with my intuitions about the world? Like, you know, if you are investigating what time is, and then the Aristotelian comes and says, okay, time is in some way grounded in change. There are many different positions as to what this grounding relation is. Is it reducible to change? Is it just, you know, and how does it fit with scientific investigations, especially with Einsteinian physics and so on? And then you see another worldview, or, for example, when it comes to modality, like, if you when you like are you a full-fledged realist when it comes to the to possible worlds like Lewis was? And then you see, okay, that's kind of has its own problems as to the grounding of modality and so on. Like, you're actually just comparing them, seeing seeing problems in one worldview, the problems in another worldview, and see are they compelling, are they coherent, and can one, even if one cannot give answers to all the problems somebody may pose to your particular worldview, are those questions detrimental? Like, for example, if you have theism and you have the problem of evil, you cannot, I myself think that you cannot answer the problem of evil. It's too complicated to even give a coherent answer to it. But then, is it detrimental to theism? Can you come up with something else, like, for example, skeptical theism, like that of Howard Snyder or something like that, or that of Michael C. Rea. So, it's kind of like you evaluate them, you critically evaluate them, see the flaws in them, and then you just see, okay, I'm buying this, this fits with my intuitions, it seems fine.
Okay. I'm sort of curious into how you define intuitions. What is intuition? Like, how do you know it is intuition? Can you talk more about that?
Sure. So, everybody has a different set of intuitions. An intuition would be something like, it's kind of teleological in nature. Like, what is it that your mind is drawn to? Like, what is it? What does it? You think about reality. You think about beings in reality. You think about metaphysical principles like existence, like essence, like causation, and so on. And then you kind of see, like, okay, what you try to define it in a way that fits either with your empirical observations. I'm not meaning by this kind of rigorous scientific observations, though they are also included in this process, but general, like, phenomenological insights into reality, something that everybody has. And you can actually then see, like...
But isn't it really subjective, though? Like, it could be possible that we are all just biologically inclined to have these intuitions because of our genetics.
I don't know how genetics play a role here. Like, sure, we have intuitions because we are rational creatures. We are rational creatures because we have a kind of rational animal nature, and this nature is grounded in some particular way in a kind of evolutionary framework of survival and so on. But first, I don't know. Why would my having an intuition about what a substance is or what causation is, I don't know what that has to do with my survival in nature, first and foremost. Secondly, sure, intuitions are subjective. Everyone has some intuitions, and we may not even share intuitions. I actually know of some case. I know myself some cases where I was kind of sure that everyone thinks the way I do, and then I kind of figured out, okay, no, it's not kind of obvious to everyone. But there are some principles. There are some fundamental principles. For example, some logical principles or principles of intelligibility, where those are actually kind of shared, among many subjects. You have all the conclusions can be subjective. You have philosophers who are, I don't know, Opie is as smart as, I don't know, Pruss or Locke or Gale, but they share some different intuitions, for example. But one actually can also do a retrospective view of one's intuitions, like see, okay, do I have some kind of bias here? Am I actually biased to favor some particular outcome or some particular view, some particular belief, and so on? Like, I'm not actually saying that my intuitions are the only thing that are not an animal. Like they are not the only thing that actually is guiding me when it comes to metaphysical reasoning, but actually they play some prominent role in it. Like, I mean, in my deconversion from Buddhism, for example, the intuition of me having a self, for example, was kind of enough to start me thinking about it deeper. Like, I realized because of my intuition that there were some problems in, for example, the Buddhist doctrine of anatta, and then I started to see, okay, what to do next, how do I critically evaluate that and or not, and so on. Like, you know, intuitions are here to begin with, but yeah, they have some role in your reasoning, but they're not.
So I guess
the only
like
thing.
it's the question like which came first, the object of my intuitions or me having the ability to have these intuitions. So
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
so I guess like it's basically that we what you're saying is that we have these intuitions because where the object of our intuitions are like intrinsic in nature already, and we may have just evolved to be sort of inclined to have these intuitions, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, it's kind of like people. I mean, I know some philosophers, but also people in general. I mean, bring this up like, you know, evolution kind of explains away some phenomena. I mean, it's not true. Like it's the same thing with intuitions, or the same thing with kind of like some beliefs and so on. Like, you know, you have some streams in the 19th century that wanted to eliminate religious belief by reducing it to some impulses that we have, you know, like, okay, religion doesn't make sense because we evolved in a way that preferred religious people to irreligious people, or superstitious people to not superstitious people, and so on. Then also in the 19th century, you have some streams which say it otherwise. Like, no, because religion is grounded in the evolutionary process, that means that it has to be true in some way or in some form of fashion. Like, you know, it's kind of like I don't like this kind of reductive. I mean, yeah, we should be aware that evolution and genetics and so on plays a role when it comes to our reasoning, when it comes to our biases, our intuitions, and so on. But you know, there is something inherent in our mind, which, because our mind has a rational nature, it is our rational nature, a capacity to think, and not only to have some kind of, to have an animalistic way of perception and so on, that we have some intuitions. They can be wrong, of course. They can lead us to wrong conclusions, of course. I could be, for example, I can be wrong when it comes to my belief that if you have, I don't know, if you have an infinite chain of contingent beings, then you need to posit some explanation for why the chain exists. Hume may disagree. His intuition may say that no, you don't have it. You don't have to posit this kind of explanation, because every link in the chain is explained right away, and then our intuitions are in a clash here. But then I might say, okay, good, fine, but you are wrong because of this and that, and you know, like it's a way, it's something inherent in our mind. It can lead us astray, but you know, it's, as I said, it's kind of teleological, something, yeah, essential to the way we are.
Well, when it comes to what you said about the detrimental objections, right? And I guess you have evaluated and considered most of the objections that come your way, and that's why you sort of have a confidence in being a theist, right? So, like, can you tell me, I guess, like, what's the closest arguments against theism that you find would be most detrimental as an objection?
Sure. So, in a way, so I'm actually categorizing those arguments in arguments that criticize criticize theism in a way that, I mean, those arguments that say that we don't actually have any good reason to even entertain theism as a genuine possibility, you know, and arguments that are really criticizing theism as such. And here I have in my mind arguments about the incoherence of the concept of God, for example, or the problem of evil. I mean, I actually think that most theistic philosophers, if you press them, if you kind of like, I don't know, if you ask them, what is the argument that is the toughest one when it comes to atheistic objections to theism, it would actually be, I think, either the hiddenness problem, the divine hiddenness problem, or the problem of evil, which I actually perceive to be two aspects of the same problem. When it comes to the first category, and those are like arguments that posit some alternative explanation, for example, or like for those reasons that theists say we need to kind of like have God in order to explain this or that aspect of reality and so on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but well, you also mentioned that metaphysical framework has to have coherence. So here's the thing, right? When it comes to theism, there are so many things that we just leave to the unknown, and I guess we call them sort of mysteries. But let's say, you also mentioned the incoherence of the concept of God, right? And the thing is, like, we as Christians, we might, or theists, we might attempt to be able to explain away and a coherent concept of God, but it's just impossible, I think, on how I look at it. But how would you, I guess, consider the concept of God as coherent if in fact there are things that we cannot know about God's true nature, full nature?
Yeah, sure. So, when it comes to this question, I always tend to be less Mysterian than I think most Christians. I mean, maybe because this is maybe one reason why I'm drawn to the Catholic faith and not to Orthodoxy, for example, because I think that the East loves Mysterianism in a way that is too much for me. But I'm actually like you. I think that a Christian, especially, but a theist in general, can analyze all the objections when it comes to the incoherence or the coherence of the concept of God, or the concept of incarnation or of revelation and so on. They can analyze them. They can see maybe some potential problems, and then they can also see some flaws. For example, I don't buy any of the arguments which say that you cannot. You also have intra-Christian objections for some particular model of God, like theistic personalists attacking classical theists on various issues and so on, and vice versa. So a theist of any stripe can analyze all the arguments that are posed. He can evaluate them, and he can, I think, come up with some solutions which would, even if they would not explain everything in detail, like one cannot explain the Trinity, for example, in detail, but one can come up with a model of God, for example, the Augustinian model, or the model that is proposed by Kuhns, and where he actually deals with the Trinity like the relata of the Trinity are kind of qua relations, and like it follows from simplicity and so on. There is still a mystery as to, we will never figure it out, because we are not God. I mean, I don't know how it is to be an antelope. I can only imagine that. I can analyze an antelope. I can come up with a complete, coherent biological picture of an antelope. I can come up with a philosophical picture about antelopes, or about dogs, or about stones. I don't know how. Okay, I know how it is to feel. I mean, you cannot feel like a stone, but I don't know how it is to be a dog, for example. That's the same way as I don't know how it is to be God. It is completely incomprehensible in this way. But the conception of God is a different thing, and one can analyze concepts, different models of God, see if they have some metaphysical problems or not, and evaluate all the objections. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's look into some of those objections, because I want to dive into free will before we go into Christianity. Let's talk about God being the attributes of God that you would agree and how you would define him, right? Like, probably because you're a Christian, you would assign like personal, all-knowing, all-powerful, eternal, all the other attributes that classical theism attributes to God. Would you also add that to God?
Yeah, I mean, I conceive of myself as a classical theist, but I am the only thing I'm not convinced when it comes to classical theism, or the only problematic attribute I see when it comes to traditional stripes of classical theism, especially Thomism, is absolute divine simplicity. I am actually in favor of a kind of divine unity as proposed by Timothy O'Connor. One can read up his papers for free on his website. So where I pose that there is a kind of unity in God, which is a kind of unity that just falls short of full absolute simplicity. And the reason I don't like simplicity, divine simplicity, is because I'm not actually kind of convinced by all the answers that theists usually give. I mean, Tomaszewski or Stephen Nemes and so on, that gave to the objection of to those modal objections, when it comes to divine simplicity. But all in all, yeah, I mean, I think that God is timeless. I'm not in the camp of Mullins and the rest. I don't think that he's sempiternal or something like that. I think that there are, I think that, for example, Craig's view is incoherent. But I think that those other views, like Swinburne's, Mullins, and so on, von Wachter's, of a sempiternal deity, they are coherent, but I am not kind of drawn. I don't see why I should accept them. So yeah, I think that God is timeless. He has maximal power, maximal knowledge, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about free will here, because let's say and free will sort of dives into the problem of evil too, right? And this is, I think, some atheists actually really consider this as a detrimental objection, as you would define it. But okay, how would you attempt to sort of answer the problem of evil? And I know that there might be some things that you cannot fully explain in terms of God's plan or ultimate desire for everyone. But how would you present your theodicy?
Yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, I'm just a layperson. I'm not a philosopher as such. I mean, but I tend to be in the camp of what is usually called skeptical theism. I mean, I don't like the view, I like the label, but it is usually called that. I would actually, first and foremost, promote, so to say, the works especially of Daniel Howard Snyder. He has an Academia Edu page. One can read his works for free. Also, Michael Rea, and I'm not sure if Pruss is also a skeptical theist when it comes to the problem of evil. I guess he is, in a way. So my view would be that because we are talking about a rational being, and not only a rational being as you and me, but a being that knows every kind of, that is completely limitless in his knowledge when it comes to all the configurations reality can achieve. We are talking about a being that we cannot make some statistical predictions, nor can we actually say that that such a being would actually maximize all the good in the world. I mean, also Rob Koons has a nice paper about God and maximalization of evil and good and so on. Like you should also read it on his webpage. So my general point would be that the atheist cannot provide a good reason as to why God cannot, simply morally cannot, I'm not saying in a way or in a metaphysical, but in a moral way, cannot in a way allow evil. Simply because we simply cannot comprehend all the reasons he may have, because he's an unlimitless mind, we are limitless minds, and you know where that goes. But also, I mean, we can have some general ideas about why would that be so. So I am kind of convinced that when it comes to human evils, also evils that are done by other humans and so on, this kind of allowance needs to take place in order for us to be completely free, and our freedom as rational agents is, in a way, a good that simply, in a way, outweighs all other goods. Also, when it comes to the problem of suffering, for example, I mean, theists usually always it's kind of irritating. Theists usually always focus on the problem when it comes to the moral actions of other agents. But, I mean, the main problem, I think, is why is there death? Why is there corruption? Why is there suffering, detrimental medical conditions, and so on and so on? As a Christian, I would say because of the fall. So I would, in a way, trace all the evil, trace it back to a particular morally relevant point, and that's, you know, in the Garden of Eden and so on. But also, if I were not a Christian, I would then embrace this more of a skeptical view and kind of throw it back to the atheist, like, okay, you only give me like we would not expect for God to allow this kind of suffering and so on, but we actually kind of don't know. Is there any good reason? There might be. Also, as a Christian, I would say that you know, if you have a theological picture of reality, especially if you are a universalist, I'm not myself, but you know that the ultimate telos, the ultimate potential outcome of the life of a human being can be ultimate bliss. We don't know what this is. I mean, we don't know qualitatively what this may entail, but in a way, as I think it was Saint Therese of Avila, she said that, you know, if you taste heaven, all of your life, all of the suffering you had and so on, it feels like just a night in a bad hotel or something like that. So, I mean, I cannot give we would need to have a talk for about 5 to 6 hours if I would actually go point by point all of those issues that are relevant for theodicy. But my point is just that we can either embrace a skeptical theism, as Howard Snyder, or Pross or Michael Rea have developed in their works. And I'm kind of like, I'm promoting them, but really they're really good. They are a really good literature. But then we can also, as Christians, come back to all of those theological issues, like why is there evil as such? Is evil conquered? Will it be conquered? Is there? And I mean, as a naturalist, all the suffering in my life, all the suffering that other beings had in their own life, it can be explained by evolutionary processes and so on. But there is actually no meaning in this. Yeah, sure, there's kind of a global meaning, like, you know, it enhances the evolutionary process and so on. But, you know, as a theist, at least as a Christian, I can see a kind of meaning in all of this. You know, I don't know if I would. I don't know. I don't see it in atheism as such. So yeah, I mean, my general view is either skeptical theism or a kind of a broader Christian perspective. Yeah. I mean, don't know if that. Yeah.
Okay, then let's
Because
look
that would
into
go in all the details. Yeah. That would be kind of.
Let's look into, I guess, like from classical theism to Christianity. What got you there? Or like, well, I guess I would predict that it's Christ's resurrection and
Sure.
and the Bible's historical reliability.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I actually don't know what kind of, except for maybe personal experience, what kind of argument would somebody find persuasive if it were not, I mean, for Christianity as such, not for theism, but for Christianity in particular, if it were not like a conviction that Jesus really rose from the dead. Like, I myself have doubts about Mormonism or about Islam, for example. They both are, in a way, theistic. But I don't see that theism leads me to a particular religion. I have to investigate all the religions, at least those that I see kind of relevant, and then figure it out. Like everybody, like it's something that everybody has to do. Or at least if you don't have a kind of personal experience and so on. I didn't have it. Like, I really started to see if the Gospels, as historical as primal sources, are reliant. And there are so many arguments for why they are not and for why they are. And there are many. I mean, this is a whole debate. You can just look up all the debates with Ehrman, for example, Ehrman and Tim McGrew and so on, all those issues. But then again, I mean, when I was investigating all of those issues, I was building on, for example, Brand Petrie or Lydia McGrew and their works, and I actually saw that all of the arguments for the historical reliability of the Gospels, as such, for kind of the real encounters the disciples had with the risen Jesus and so on, they seem to be historical because, I mean, the arguments in favor of their historicity, in my opinion, overweight the arguments or the objections one can pose, like kind of contradictions and so on, which can be actually accounted for in a way. So, I mean, Lydia is doing this. I'm actually in contact with her quite a lot, and we discussed all those issues. Also, it's kind of fitting. I mean, yeah, all those arguments are fine and well, but Christianity is kind of fitting when it comes to theism. Like, if you are a theist, you, in a way, I mean, what differentiates a theist from a deist is the fact that God really does interact with the world. How does he do it? It's kind of like the ultimate Christianity. I see Christianity as a coherent worldview that kind of ultimately explains all of the issues we actually discussed, like I don't know, evil, why is there suffering, why is there death, and so on. Like, so the case for Christianity would be like a case from a historical case as such, and a case from fittingness or beauty maybe. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well. How about like the objections to Christ's resurrection, and especially on the reliability of the Gospels, right? And the accounts. How would you reconcile those?
Yeah, I mean, there are many, like, there are many contradictions proposed contradictions, intra-gospel contradictions with the historical data we have, especially Luke's census, for example. It's a whole debate on this issue alone. There are also you have to differentiate between the objections when it comes to the reliability of the Gospels, and also naturalistic proposals as to why Christianity arose as a religious phenomenon and so on, like how to account for the resurrection without embracing the resurrection as such. I mean, we would actually need to go like into every kind of objection or to any kind of contradiction there is, in order to see if it is a contradiction or if it is not. Can it be accounted? Or also, what kind of model do we have? How do we see the Gospels? Like Lydia, for example, and I myself shared this with her, she's not an inerrantist, in the sense that, the Gospel authors could have made errors. They could have had false beliefs, or I think that there are some errors, especially when it comes to Matthew, but we would need to discuss this in more detail. If you have a model, you actually have to find out what kind of model is the material suggesting to you. Like, Lydia has this kind of reportage model, like that gospel witnesses actually, or the gospel writers, actually are the traditional writers. Like Luke was really was a traveler with Paul, and Mark was really a disciple of Peter in Rome, and so on. It is kind of like you have to evaluate all the objections one by one in order to see, what to do with that. Also, how would you deal with those objections if they were, for example, applied to ancient secular literature? I see in many atheists, especially in Ehrman and co, that they're actually kind of inconsistent in a way that they raise some objections. I mean, they're really good objections, but they raise some objections that are trivial, for example, that one would never raise for a secular text. Like, I don't know, how many times something is mentioned? Is it mentioned loud enough? Is John's voice, is Jesus' voice in John really the kind of Jesus would expect, and so on? Like, all those trivial kind of objections, like you are making a problem out of thin air. You're doing something that you would not do if you were dealing with a secular text with secular prime source. I mean, you really need to dig it up. Like, you really need to do the hard work of seeing, like, are those objections valid? Are they not? Can we, in a way, like, how persuasive are they actually? Like, even if some of those, like, even if, for example, there is a genuine contradiction, is it kind of like devastating for the historical account as such, or is it maybe not? Also, when it comes to those naturalistic proposals, like massive hallucinations, or like some other kinds of like those alternatives that want to actually kind of propose a naturalistic way of looking at this without embracing resurrection, can they be actually upheld? How probable are they? I mean, you can also read in. I think Lydia and Tim McGrew wrote a whole paper. I mean, it's kind of like 70 pages long, about a Bayesian-styled argument for the resurrection, where they actually are like looking into, like, okay, what's the probability of Matthew inventing this or that, or Luke inventing this or that kind of thing, or and then you can kind of like see, okay, do those objections hold up or not? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the next question I generally ask my Christian guests is that, what's your view on the old Earth, or I guess the creation narrative? What side do you take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I call myself an atheistic evolutionist, though this term has some baggage associated with it. I see Genesis as a kind of a poem, like a poem written in prose style. I also have some reasons for viewing it that way, building on the hermeneutics of Daniel Castellano and Brand Petrie, I think, also as well. So I actually don't see it as kind of literal. I actually see some hints in the text itself, which kind of suggest to us that the author didn't find them literal too. But then, I mean, as a Catholic, I have to embrace monogenism. I cannot be a polygenist. I do really have to believe in a primordial pair of humans from which every other human on this planet is descended from, So I kind of view it as, I'm actually following Dr. Bonnet, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. My theory is broadly speaking an Aristotelian ensoulment theory. Like, I myself see it as we actually encounter all the data we have, we see that somewhere I think Homo erectus. I think we are talking about Homo erectus. We can find in the population, in at least the major population of Homo erectus, signs of rationality. That would suggest to us that indeed those were people. I mean, they were capable of abstract knowledge, and hence, I think from a generally Thomistic viewpoint, they have souls, like they are rational creatures. Hence, they have rational souls. I mean, souls in a relevant way for Christianity. So, yeah, I mean, they can have the same material constitution as, Homo erectus and such. They can also mating with other kind of creatures who are not in a way metaphysically humans, but are biologically seen as humans, at least human-like, humanoid, in a way. And here is where we have all the genetic diversity and so on. Also, I would point out that Nicanor Austriaco, I think that he is from the Philippines. I think he is. He also had some work building on Chomsky as to why language needs to evolve in just one individual. Or why would it be like this? This is also a kind of a piece of evidence that would point towards this view that that rationality sprung from either one or two individuals. There are some problems in this, like there are some problems when it comes to the genetic bottleneck. There also, Lydia has done some work on this too, but generally I'm actually on the evolution side. I think that one can coherently believe that we, as a metaphysical species, like human beings, like rational creatures, have emerged from a pair and that this belief doesn't entail that biologically we have emerged from a pair. Like I make this distinction, which is kind of crucial for everyone who wants to affirm some kind, like real monogenism, without falling prey to all the issues in genetics and so on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I guess that's a really complicated topic, I guess.
It is.
But when it comes to, is it really, I guess, essential for me to be a Christian to have like right beliefs in this? I would say no. Would you agree?
Sure. No, it isn't. Like, okay, if you are a Catholic, you have to be a monogenist. Like, but if you are a Christian as such, you don't have to be. Like, you have people like Swami Das, for example, who he has a view of Adam. He actually believes in a literal Adam and Eve, but he doesn't believe that all humans descended from them. He has this kind of ancient temple view of Adam and Eve as the pinnacle of human beings and so on, but not as the literal kind of like originating point of all humanity. So yeah, you can be a Christian. You don't have to embrace. You can also, you can embrace a full-fledged evolutionary polygenetic model and be a Christian as such. You have to deal a bit with Paul. Like Paul gives us some hints that like the new Adam, like Christ being the new Adam and so on, but there are ways to deal with this, and I know many intelligent Christians who don't hold to monogenism and such, and who actually are full-fledged polygenist evolutionists. So yeah, you can be. You can also believe in a literal 7-day creation if you have good arguments, but it's scientific and scriptural as to why should anybody embrace this. So yeah.
Well, when it comes to coherence, right? What I generally think about it is that, if you're going to have arguments for God in terms of the classical theist arguments, and then you're going to talk about that, and also you're going to hold a sort of a billion-year-old Earth and universe and billions of years old universe and all of that, and then when it comes to theology, right? Specifically, everything in from Adam to Jesus Christ and to eschatology. I guess that the philosophy that you hold has to also be coherent and corresponding to your specific theology, right?
Well, yes, but for example, my favorite argument for the existence of God would be a kind of a modified Leibnizian contingency argument, for example. But even if you prefer a kind of Aristotelian argument, the full-fledged Thomistic 5 ways and so on, like those deal with issues of metaphysics that are kind of, and they are not actually so much relevant when it comes to theology. Like, it's kind of like you can be atheist based on all of those arguments and all of those streams of reasoning as such, without being a Christian, without being religious as such. So we have to differentiate. Those two things. You can, yeah, sure. You cannot be a helomorphist and have some willy-nilly conceptions of Adam, for example, or of Christ's humanity and of Christ's divinity that would contradict your own viewpoints about, for example, helomorphism. Or you cannot actually, you have to be kind of like coherent when it comes to this view. But broadly speaking, those issues are irrelevant for one another. You can be just a mere theist without embracing any, and many of those metaphysical issues are kind of irrelevant when it comes to full-fledged theology. Yeah, in my humble opinion, sir.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess when it, I also think that when it comes to all the rational arguments and metaphysical inquiries into the ultimate truth, right, and finding for ourselves whether or not there is a God, I generally lean on actual fideism, not in a sense that I don't see I disagree. I ignore rationality altogether, but more so on that in terms of the nature of truth and what you said about experience, right? What it means to be God, or what does it mean to be an antelope? Basically, I'm referring to phenomenology, right? And for me, the kind of truth that I'm experiencing, which is, let's say I'm experiencing the Holy Spirit working in me, and I'm also calling it some sort of assurance of my salvation and faith. I would also generally actually call that evidence, but it might not be falsifiable or fall into the criteria of most analytic philosophers. But let's say that I want to ask you this, right? That if someone actually proves to you rationally that God doesn't exist, would you stop being a theist then?
Well, I don't know if you remember when I started talking about all of this. I said that faith is a kind of gift. I'm not actually. I want to find a kind of balance when it comes to faith and reason. I actually think that this is a great issue in Catholic theology as such. If I'm not actually having faith in something I know is unreasonable, you know. But that doesn't mean that I am just simply believing because of some rational grounds I have. As I said, you know, you have people who are so much skeptical of even a thought version of the PSR. For example, like there is no argument you could ever make that would satisfy that skepticism. Does that mean that one should actually embrace their skepticism? Well, I don't think so. This is where we come back to like intuitions and kind of a priori principles and so on. You know, if somebody would actually come now and say, okay, I have this argument which really proves that believing God is irrational, like completely or that the concept of God you hold is contradictory, I would then not believe either in this concept of God or in theism as such. So I do tend to this more rationalistic side. However, I'm actually not kind of like making personal experiences irrelevant. Like if you really do think that the Holy Spirit is leading you somewhere, like, okay, it's not falsifiable, I guess, but it's actually not even intended to be falsifiable in a way. I think that you are justified to actually hold to those beliefs in case those beliefs are not evidentially irrational, you know? Like even if you even if you cannot come up with, for example, take Van Inwagen. Like Van Inwagen is a Christian philosopher. Though I always find him somewhere criticizing various arguments for the existence of God. You know, it's kind of like it's funny to see his name pop up in references in philosophical papers discussing especially contingency arguments and so on. But so, one can ask Van Inwagen, why does he actually believe? You know, like even if all the arguments for God's existence fail, we would need to talk about 10 to 20 hours about every the arguments and why they don't fail or maybe don't fail and so on. But you know, even if they all fail, that is not proof that theism is irrational as such. It's kind of like, you know, it reminds me of Plantinga's ontological argument, where the sole point of his ontological argument is not that here is a really good reason you should believe in God, but that if you believe in God, you are rational to do so. Like you're not having an irrational belief. It's just that you cannot prove it in any way. Like you cannot have some axioms or proofs or arguments in favor of it. I disagree with Plantinga in that I do think one can have good arguments for, or that at least point to God. But until something is not shown to be irrational, and if you have some experiences, religious experiences, then I think you are justified in your belief. Though you cannot bring somebody else to believe in what you do. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess like one last question though, because when it comes to what is actually justified belief, right? And in terms of the PSR, the principle of sufficient reason, isn't it really just subjective to how on what standard one sets for himself to whether or not he could accept this belief as true or not? Or what are the conditions here, and how do you look at the PSR?
Okay, so when it comes to this general epistemological question as to what is justified belief, everything that is rationally coherent is justified. Now, what is rationally coherent? Anything that doesn't have some logical contradictions in it, or that has not some conceptual problems. For example, for example, I mean, this is just an example. I don't want to open a whole can of worms. But for example, I was recently seeing this debate with Oppie and Luke, and I was kind of like thinking to myself, okay, Oppie's proposal here is really metaphysically problematic. I know of many other naturalistic proposals that are not, but this one really is. So I'm not seeing how OP is justified to believe this. For example, I mean, this is just an example, yeah. So something, in order to a belief to be justified, it needs to be, I mean, first and foremost, coherent. It needs to not be logically nor metaphysically problematic, and there has to be some reason as to why one believes that what he does. Now, as we said, you could have just a subjective personal reason, but you cannot falsify your claim that the Holy Spirit is working in you. But I actually cannot come up with any counter argument as to no, you're just imagining it yourself and so on. No, I mean, I would not be justified to believe in this because of your experience, but I'm not actually sure that you are not justified in your belief if you experience such things. When it comes to the PSR in general, as I said, there are people who are completely skeptical about it. I myself have the intuition that everything in reality needs to have a reason for why it is as it is. It either has to do something with the intrinsic nature of a thing, and then those would be like metaphysically necessary facts about beings who either are contingent or necessary, or it has to do like this reason as to why those facts are like they are, why those things are like they are, have to do with other things that explain them. This intuition isn't just like floating free in my mind. It's grounded in both in my empirical investigations of the world, like what I see, what I encounter, what phenomena do I actually I am in contact with, and what can I infer from all of this, and some rational principles as to, okay, is there a good argument for there being brute facts? Can there be brute facts as such? Or what is the metaphysical cost? Like if you don't embrace the PSR, then you actually have a good amount of metaphysical costs. Pross is discussing them in his paper on the Leibnizian cosmological argument, and I think it's in the Blackwell Companion to Natural Theology. I'm not sure. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What to say more.
That's awesome. Actually, that's a good answer. And okay, one last question, bro. And I want to talk about more and dive into I guess like into the sort of a meaning of life, I guess, an existentialism derived from your Christian perspective, and basically how should a Christian behave, because you are a Catholic, right? So in general, why are we here, and what is our end goal as a human society? Are we just here to wait for Christ to return, or how should we deal amongst ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, those questions are as ancient as humanity is. I mean, as somebody who's coming to Christianity from, for example, from Buddhism, that's actually states that there is no meaning towards life, and the only meaning one should actually have in one's life is to annihilate oneself, to actually kind of like go out of existence of this cycle of suffering and so on. As a Christian, I think that this is completely like it's ridiculous. I mean, I see my life, I see myself as having some value. my existence as being, as at least having more value than the existence of, I don't know, of my bed or of my car and so on. Also, I see this value in other human beings precisely because they are the kind of beings that they are, because they are beings that have the capacity, intrinsic capacity to think, to feel, to love, as such. So, I mean, we should not, as Christians, be in a way like, okay, as you said, like just sitting around and waiting for Jesus to come. We are actually here to build the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven on earth. We are the bricks that I think that Christ will use when actually, we are the ones, we are the vehicles through which Christ is working in the world. Our meaning should consist in living the life that is guided by natural reason. I base my ethical conceptions.
Wait, but isn't evangelism just the only reason why we're still here? If you're a Catholic?
I don't think so. No, I don't. Evangelism plays an important role in all of this, but it's not it's not the only fact. It's not that Jesus will return sooner if we actually stop evangelizing. It is not actually that. It is kind of like building a better world in accordance with the natural law and in accordance with God's revelation. Now, that entails evangelism to some extent. But evangelism is not, it is, in a way, it is the end goal to bring everybody to Christ in accordance to their own,
Wait. So are you saying that we are all Christians on earth are sort of have the responsibility to establish God's kingdom here, which means that everybody has the ideal utopia that a Catholic has in mind is a Christian and global civilization?
No. No, actually, I would say that any Catholic who has just a bit of a brain would actually see that any conception of a utopia wasn't, in a way, was actually never going well in history. So no, it's not in a way that we are building something like we are making an idealized world. When I say that we are here to, in a way, to build God's kingdom, we have to start with ourselves. We are here actually to be penitent, to try to live a good life, to try to establish kind of natural happiness and supernatural happiness as such. And we are actually, we are not here to build an utopia, because in my opinion, there is no utopia. You cannot have a utopia based on fallible human beings. It's simply impossible, even if they were all Catholic and so on. Yeah, sure, as a Catholic, I think the world would be better in a way if everybody would be a Catholic, but it would not be a perfect world. In the medieval period, everyone was a Catholic to some extent, but you still had, the criminal rates were much, much higher than today. So we actually have to focus on our inner life. It's not just Catholics who think that.
Wait, okay. Here's how I interpret what you're saying then. That evangelism is a huge role in it, but we actually evangelize and share Christ's salvation to people because it sources out from that we as human beings, we're born on this earth to live a good life for Christ and glorify Him with our personal life, and that includes evangelism, and we die, and that's it. We're just here to live a good life so that when we die, we can get to heaven. Is that sort of it?
Yeah, we should not actually. Yeah, okay. This is actually fine. Kind of like it is fine in the. In the way you said it, it's kind of like, to get to heaven, what does that actually mean? Like, in my opinion, and I actually am drawing this from a kind of like Orthodox perspective, heaven as such is also a process. Like, it is a never-ending process of love. Like, you're actually embracing the eternal God, but you can never do that as such, in an ontological way. So you are always, in a way, processing blissfulness and love in a higher and higher and a higher way. Hence, I see our current earthly life here as a way of a kind of like, I don't know, as a kind of ground from which we start. Our evangelization, our efforts in the world are nothing more than the manifestation of our inner life that we have. Like a saint cannot hold Christ into himself. If he is in contact with other human beings, if he lives with them, then he has to bring Christ in some way, some shape or form to them. But our life here is just the beginning. It's just the ground from which we start. As if you are an atheist, then I guess your life is just that, what it is. You have to have a good life, have fun, but not suffer as much, and that's all. But as a Christian, you actually have a mission that is, in a way, that consists of your having a good inner life, and trying to actually understand the biggest mystery of all, namely God Himself.
Mm-hmm. So those are our three missions. Have a good inner life, know God, at least attempt to know God fully, and then evangelize. Yeah. Right? Very simple.
Those are all manifestations of the one single, of the one single love for God that a Christian should have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. One last thing, and I'm done. Because this interview has been really awesome, man. Yeah. Okay. With that said, if that is the pursuit of a Christian, or from your Catholic perspective, like in this life, that this is the meaning of my life, to love God and love my neighbor, just to be a person of love, right? So how should I then dive into politics? Because I know for a fact that if love is my ultimate goal on earth, then my I guess my actions and my pursuit in terms of the society and culture and politics is to at least better the conditions of everyone else, right? How would you put it?
Well, first and foremost, I would make sure that you don't have an idealized view of what you can establish. Like everyone who is coming into politics and who has this idea that his views are the best and that the world would be the best if everyone embraces his ideas, is kind of like he will fail even before he actually starts. We're in politics is here for it's a kind of I have a kind of an Aristotelian vision of politics. Like it's here to make. We are social animals. We are coming into being in a society. We are dying in a society. We depend in some way on society, and it's actually like also, Kuhns also wrote about this. It's a way, politics is a way to establish a balance between personal interests, individual interests, that in a way ground the collective interest, and the balance between a collective interest that in a way is also like grounded in personal individual interests. So if you are as a Christian, if you are going to, your mission should be to make this world better. How do you do that? Well, in a way you should follow your Christian faith. You should actually, your politics should be, as I said, the manifestation of your inner life. You should bring Christ in a way to the political sphere. What way will that be? I don't know. You have Catholics who are socialists, who are distributists, who are capitalists. They all share the same. Kind of principles, ethical principles, but they have a different conception as to what is the best way to manifest those principles in action. So. You should always keep in mind that no utopia will ever exist without Christ, as such, without His second coming, as such, like before His second coming. But you are here to strive to make the world better in a way. What this way will be, you have to figure out with reason. Is it going to be like what principles, what economic principles, what principles of law will you like introduce to society? What ideas do you have to make the world kind of better? It also depends heavily on the culture you live, the environment you live. Like I have, like my society has a different set of problems than your society, and different levels and different aspects, and so on. We all share, like as Catholics, we're living all over the world, and as Christians as such, we all share some principles in common, and those principles will manifest in a different way, depending on our reasoning and depending on where we live. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And so what are your plans for your life, bro? Like, how are you going to manifest God's love in your life, and I guess focus on becoming and bettering your inner life? What's the plan?
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm striving to be a good husband, God willingly a good father. First and foremost, like those are the people God give to me to actually. I mean, those people, like my wife, my children, my family, my friends, are the ones that I have the biggest responsibility for. Also, having a better life of prayer, I think of rational inquiry as such as well, like even studying more deeper some issues pertaining to my faith that are relevant in some way for my faith, and well, trying to make Christ a relevant factor in everything I do. Sometimes it will be fine. Sometimes I'll not succeed in this. But well, that's life. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, Ante, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. You've been an awesome
it was a pleasure.
guest.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
So that's the end of it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This is your host, Elmo Ador Jr. And thank you for listening in. And please subscribe. Please follow us on Facebook. Please follow this. Please. Thanks.
It's the holidays, which usually means employing your surprise face. But winter-winning scratchers are loaded with $500 prizes, so there's always a surprise. Unlike the 27th snowflake ornament from Grandma. Play along with holiday scratchers from the Virginia Lottery at a retailer near you. For odds and more information, visit VALottery.com.
Holidays are here, and so is fashionable fitness. Gift yourself a Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 3 5G, a phone that folds in half to literally stand on its own. Pair it with the Galaxy Watch 4 for ultimate wellness and wow factor. Check health stats, flex personal records. Over 90 activities can be tracked, like biking, swimming, golfing, and more. Invest in yourself with tech made to crush goals. Holidays open up with Galaxy. Shop it all at Samsung.com. 5G connection and availability may vary. Check with carrier. Products sold separately.